All right. Good evening, everyone. It is June 2nd, 2020, and you are here for the Athens-Clarke County Mayor and Commission's monthly voting meeting. There will be an executive session to follow. We are going to go ahead and begin, as we always do, with a roll call from Clerk Spratlin.
Davenport?
Here.
Parker?
Here.
Davenport here. Parker?
Here.
Blake?
Here.
Wright?
Present.
Denson?
Here.
Naismith?
Present.
Edwards?
Here.
Harrod?
Present.
Thornton? Present. Hamby? Hamby?
He's here. Mike,
I
you're
think so. Okay. Okay, we have a quorum.
But he's here.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm sorry.
All right. Thank you, Madam Clerk. I appreciate it. All right. First item of business is approval of minutes of the meetings from Tuesday, May 5th, Tuesday, May 19th, Thursday, May 21st, and Thursday, May 28th. I would entertain a motion for approval of those minutes.
I'll move.
Second.
All right. I've got a motion from Commissioner Link. I think I've got a second from Commissioner Naismith. All right. Any comments on the minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Minutes from those meetings are approved. All right. Madam Clerk, do we have any written communications this evening?
We have one. For entry to the record, we have a report of acceptance of a street known as Tally Crossing.
Thank you, Madam
That's the
Clerk.
only one.
I appreciate it. I'm going to have to get out there on my map app and find out where that is. Okay. We are going to move on to item D of our meeting this evening, which is the second public hearing on the proposed FY21 budget as required by the Taxpayer Bill of Rights, passed by the General Assembly. So rules of public input are the same as they normally are, in which we have a 3-minute opportunity for those members of the public that are socially distantly lined up in the chamber. They will have 3 minutes apiece. When they have 30 seconds remaining, they will see a light that turns yellow, and when their 3 minutes are up, their light will turn red. All right, and so if, staff will go ahead and put the public input camera on, and I've got the clock in front of me. All right, sir,
Yes.
go right ahead.
Ladies and gentlemen of the commission, I appreciate the opportunity to speak to y'all this evening. I came to ask you to not increase my taxes. And I've heard a lot of people say, well, we're not increasing taxes. But actually you are if you approve your budget based on the increased assessments. And I'm here to ask you to roll back your millage rate to equal the increase in the growth of the property digest. We've all of us have experienced about 2.5 months of vacation, unpaid vacation, I might add. This is absolutely the very worst time you could possibly implement a tax increase, which is what this is. Thank you for your time.
Sir, can I get your name and street address for the record?
My name is John Elliott. I live on Southview Drive. It cost me about $500 a month to live in a house I paid for 25 years ago.
Thank you, Mr. Elliott. I appreciate it. Good evening.
My name is Gordon Roden. I live on Heather Cove in Athens, 30606. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. There is no question that we are living in unprecedented times. Who would have ever thought that a pandemic would attack us and hit us like it has? And there is no question that it has affected all Athenians, in some form or fashion. It's affected all of us. There have been so many, and I know I have watched you from the comfort of my living room when you've had your commissioner meetings. That's been kind of nice. That dealing with, the financial obligations and the predicament that we found with the prosperity package that I didn't even realize we had. So that was good. And how you are attempting to help local businesses and business owners, people who have lost their jobs, lost their incomes. It's an incredible situation that we live in. Several weeks back when I got my reassessment of my property, I was a little shocked. Years ago when I was very young, I was in youth ministry, and we had a contest between two of the groups of kids, and the loser had to kiss a pig, and I borrowed a pig from a guy in Morgan County, little pig, and that pig got out that night. And I went through the woods looking for this pig, and I found that pig, and I got it home. It felt like, a child to me. But you know what? If I had taken that pig and put lipstick on it and dressed it up and called it a dog, it's still a pig. And that's what you have done with a tax increase. You can call it's the millage rate, it's because of the assessment, any way you want to. And the only people who can make a difference in this are you guys by rolling the millage rate back. I remember when we were dealing with the SPLOST question. You might know I was against the SPLOST. I was. Jerry knows. I was against the SPLOST. But one of the selling factors of the SPLOST was that if this is implemented, we're not going to have to affect property taxes. That's what we were told, because we're going to spread the tax burden off of all the visitors and all the UGA ball game people and everybody that comes in. Well, how's that working out for us? I hadn't seen a convention in town. I hadn't seen anybody attending ball games. So that sales tax is there. So where's that money going to be made up? I'm sure you've thought about that. I don't know if you've had a work session to deal with that. Was this proposed in the budget? But in my business, I have a fiduciary responsibility. That I hope you all know this. A fiduciary obligation exists whenever the relationship with the client involves a special trust, confidence, and reliance on the fiduciary to exercise his discretion or expertise in acting for the client. When one person does agree to act for another in a fiduciary responsibility relationship, the law forbids the fiduciary from acting in any manner adverse or contrary to the interest of the clients or from acting on his own benefit in relation to the subject matter.
Thank you,
Ladies
Mr.
and
Roden.
gentlemen, you have a fiduciary responsibility to the citizens of Clarke County. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Good evening.
Hi there, John Marsh, 310 Holman Avenue, Athens. I moved here in 1993, so I've been here more than a couple of years. I'm here to ask y'all to roll the millage rate back to the rollback rate given to you by the state. Now is not the time to raise taxes, and it's the height of callousness to raise taxes on folks at a time like this with all of the problems that people are having. In my neighborhood, I have talked to 3 different households over the past few months, elderly folks, 2 of which have said if they did not die soon, they would be forced to move out of their house because of the increased taxes and all the other costs. One of those persons died. His wife is still there, but he did die in March. But the point being is that it's getting to where it is squeezing people far too much. And especially now when people are out of work, business is down, sales are down, and everything else. Now is not the time to raise taxes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marsh. Any further public input on this matter? All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming regarding this. Item number E is the public hearing for general comments on the proposed FY21 budget. So if there's anybody who would like to make...
Mr. Mayor, we may have somebody else waiting. Let's see. Call it out again if you wouldn't mind.
Hi, I'm Paula Loniak and live in Oglethorpe County against my will. And I just got a hold of the whole 386 pages today, so I really looked at it quickly, but just skimming the affordable housing and anything that kind of was attached to that or related to it, it seems to me that there might be some overlap, like the corridor improvement or beautification project that's getting $75,000. Well, if we built affordable housing, which we've talked about at the mall, Georgia Square Mall location, that's one of the major corridors into and out of Athens. And that maybe part of that $75,000 could be applied to, affordable housing. And I'm just saying, just from the quick skimming I did, it looked like there might be some of these categories that are possibly overlapping and could be combined for a better effect. Thank you very much. Stay well.
Thank you, Ms. Loniak. Any other input on our budget? Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, everybody. My name is Sam Raffle. I live at 230 Spalding Circle. Just want to let you all know we're not immune to what's going on in this country right now. We support all the peaceful protests that seek justice for the family of George Floyd and an end to racism in all its forms. However, we do want to draw a sharp distinction between improving emergency medical response times to citizens in their time of greatest need and the very real and important issues surrounding the murder of George Floyd. They are at opposite ends of the spectrum. One can save a life, the other takes a life. I'm here tonight asking you to strongly support the recommendation of our ACC 911 Communication Center to unify our 911 system. Commissioner Denson has located additional money from E911 funds for capital outlay. Not only will option 4 unify our system, it will decrease downtime when National Center is too busy dealing with another county like Morgan or Oconee. It will improve coordination between fire and EMS units responding to the same emergency, and it will decrease response times. Option 3 does none of these things. The bottom line is option 4 will save lives in our community, period. Additionally, for the first time, it will provide much needed transparency, making response data accessible. Captain Kelly has thought of the technical and logistical issues, and he presented to us at the July 2019 work session, and he still recommended option 4 twice, once in August of 17 and again in April of 2019. I thought you might be interested in exactly what Dee Burkett told the mayor and commission when this issue was discussed at length at the July 9th, 2019 work session. Mr. Burkett was asked by Commissioner Edwards if he thought it would help if all the 911 calls were routed through one center. Mr. Burkett responded at 1 hour, 7 minutes, and 30 seconds of that meeting. That's a great question. We believe there would be a benefit. He goes on to say that that's a decision for you, ladies and gentlemen, to make, not us, not the hospitals. We are ready to cooperate in any endeavor you want to initiate to make that happen, end quote. Let's make that happen. Let's save a life today. Support option 4, please. It was once said, children are the living messages we send to a time we will not see. What will we send our future? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Raffle.
Good evening, y'all. How you doing? My name is Bob Gadd, 134 Milton Road in Winterville. To respect your time, I have a brief statement to request full implementation of option 4. This will streamline the dispatching of ambulances and will be a significant improvement to the current system. As a retired paramedic, I know firsthand, more than I care to know, the importance of rapid responses to emergency medical calls. Option 4 will facilitate that to occur. So please make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I think it's here.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for your input. Again, the next item on the agenda are general comments for the proposed FY21 budget. I want to remind everybody that we do have our next budget work session tomorrow evening, Wednesday the 3rd at 5:30. So we'll have extensive conversation then.
And Mayor Gertz, will there be public comment then?
I believe we need 3 public hearings on the budget. Clerk Spratland, can you remind me, is there public input tomorrow night or will it be at the following meeting?
There is not input tomorrow night, but it will be at your voting meeting.
That's right.
On the
So
16th.
on the 16th, there will be, but not tomorrow evening. Thank you. Good question, Mariah. Okay, we are moving on to item F. This is the public hearing deliberation on recommendations from the Planning Commission. And the first Planning Commission item we have is the request from Brett Nave and Studio BNA for the property at 230 North Finley Street. Is anyone here to speak to this item?
Let's see, right here.
Yep.
Okay.
Good evening.
Hi. Thanks, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
I can. Just let us know your name for the record.
Okay, Brett Nave, Studio BNA Architects, 200 Plum Alley. Thanks, everyone. Everyone can hear me?
Yep.
Very great. Thanks, everyone. I appreciate your comments and your review at the agenda setting hearing. Just a little bit of background. It seemed like it may be better if I'm just here to answer questions. A little bit of background. As most everyone knows now, we had a benefit of getting to work with Melissa from day one on this, and she helped us immensely try and figure out what the best approach for this particular site would be. And given its unique location as a CD parcel, surrounded by non-CD effectively, other than towards downtown, and transition parcel, so to speak, being able to work with Melissa and figure out how to transition from the neighborhood, from the one block off of Broad and kind of a non-walkable zone. The question really was, what's best for this property? And I feel like as a group, with Melissa, the team, the development team, and the Planning Commission's comments, which were instrumental in helping us get to where we are currently, I feel like we've come up with a project that is beneficial to Athens. And that really was our initial discussions with our client, is what's going to be the best project to put here, and balance the needs of Athens, the special considerations for that particular site with its grade, topography, and slight detachment from the other retail and restaurants in town. And hopefully you guys see the result of that group effort. We really appreciate that. Rather than belabor more introduction, if our report's clear enough, I'll just make myself available for any questions, clarifications. Other than this one, I'd like to touch on Commissioner Wright asked at the end of the agenda setting, and Brad chimed in for us to help explain that condition that we were addressing with the fire department. And basically that was just a question on how to access the deck and the different levels of the building in a specific way. And we were able to work with Fire Marshal Hendricks and Captain Daniel to quickly, without rearranging the building or anything, we just quickly made some adjustments there, and they're happy with our outcome. So they're able to protect the building. So other than that, all the conditions I believe were met. And so again, I'll just make myself available and let me know how I can answer the question.
Thank you, Mr. Nave. Anyone else to speak on the zoning item? Okay, so we're going to move forward to commission conversation. Attorney Drake, I believe this has an ordinance attached to it, so I'll just have you read that now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. An ordinance to amend the code of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia, with respect to rezoning a parcel of land comprising approximately 1.91 acres located at 230 North Finley Street from CDWE Commercial Downtown West End Downtown Design Area to CD West WEPD Commercial Downtown West End Downtown Design Area Plan Development for other purposes.
Thank you, Attorney Drake. All right, Commissioner Link, this is in your district, so I want to give you an opportunity to discuss.
I think Mr. Nave summed it up pretty well. He called me up pretty early on when this project was just a concept, and I did voice some concerns about this being a transitional property and right next to kind of a traditionally single-family historic neighborhood. It's weird that it's zone CD, and with that zoning, you could really see a 10-foot giant block soaring above the skyline. We worked on a design that allows for that transition, and the variance for the ground floor residential I felt was completely appropriate to this project because it is very much still a residential neighborhood, and I feel like it'll bring some life to that street front. And possibly also add a little diversity to the tenant mix. I feel like, there are older folks, working folks who might be more amenable to living in, a large scale apartment building if they have their own front door to go in and out into the neighborhood from. There's some really nice commercial spaces with large outdoor areas, which is great in this time and age, So I feel like this is, the best possible project we could get for this space, in light of the zoning that we do have there. So, I certainly support this project.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Neesmith.
Melissa, you want to make a motion?
Oh, yeah. I'll move that we adopt this.
I'll second it. And I want to commend the developer for being open-minded and working with you, Melissa, and I commend you for some really, really good hard work to make this a really great development for your neighborhood.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other commission input on this item? I agree both with Commissioner Neesmith and Commissioner Link. I think this is going to be a real asset, and while higher density, an aesthetic improvement to this block. So excited to stroll by it here in a matter of months. No other input. We have a motion from Commissioner Link, a second from Commissioner Neesmith. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you, everyone. All right, moving on to our second zoning item this evening. And as we know, this in some ways is a placeholder for an element of the North Downtown redevelopment on 11.96 acres that are listed as 105 and 155 Hickman Drive to rezone to commercial downtown. And then as discussed previously in this conversation, we are then going to get a plan development that will take the place of this, but this allows us to apply for the federal low-income housing tax credits that are necessary for mixed income redevelopment in this location. Attorney Drake, again, I'll go ahead and have you read the ordinance on this.
Yes, sir. An ordinance to amend the Code of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia with respect to amending the official future development map of Athens-Clarke County by changing the designation of two parcels of land comprising approximately 11.96 acres in total, located at 105 and 155 Hickman Drive, from mixed density residential to downtown for other purposes.
Thank you, Attorney Drake. And this is in Commissioner Thornton's district. Commissioner Thornton, do you want to say a few words?
I'm fine with it. I still would like to know more as we move forward. Like I said, when it was presented last month, I didn't realize it might have been my fault because those things are discussed in planning meetings. So anything in my district in the future, if someone would just shoot me something, because I do overlook things, but I know for the good of it all, of the project and the community, I do support it.
Thank you, Commissioner. You all put that in a form of a motion?
I move that we support the recommendation for the rezoning.
I second.
All right, I've got a motion from Commissioner Thornton, second from Commissioner Wright. Any other commission discussion of this? All right, I'll just say that having been involved in elements of this project planning, I'll put it that way, for quite a number of years. I'm very excited, first and foremost, for the residents who are going to benefit from a better place to call home. So thanks to everybody out there who's contributed to this project. We've got a long ways to go, but this is an important milestone. So a motion from Commissioner Thornton, second from Commissioner Wright. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, next order of business is also a public hearing.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
we need two votes. There are two ordinances on this, and the land use and the actual zoning. So we need another vote on the zoning.
Thank you so much. So let's consider the vote that we just took place, the future land use. Can I hear a motion for the rezoning?
So moved.
I move that we for the motion for the rezoning.
All right, motion from Commissioner Thornton, second from Commissioner Neesmith. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, rezoning carries. Thank you all. All right, moving forward, by state law, we have to have a public hearing and deliberation regarding abandonment for the old roadbed of the realigned Morton Road and its associated excess right-of-way at US 78. So
Mr.
relatively small remnant parcel. Yeah, Attorney Drake.
Just out of an abundance of caution, let me read that and let y'all vote again, since this is a zoning matter and everything so technical with regard to that. So I'm going to read that heading, if y'all don't mind. I apologize, I missed that. Thank you, Madam Clerk. It is an ordinance to amend the Code of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia, with respect to rezoning two parcels of land comprising approximately 11.96 acres and total located 105 Hickman Drive and 155 Hickman Drive from RM2 mixed density residential to CDDS commercial downtown Darty Street design area for other purposes.
All right. Thank you for reading that into the record. I appreciate it, Attorney Drake.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on to the matter of Morton Road. We require a public hearing. Is there anyone here in the chamber to speak to the Morton Road remnant? Commissioner Davenport, this is in your district. Do you want to make any comments on this, or would you like to? And actually, I'll ask Attorney Drake. Are we at the stage in hearings on this road abandonment to make a motion? You're muted, Attorney Drake.
Mr. Mayor, let me take a look and I'll advise. Give me 1 second.
I think this is the second hearing.
Since we don't count the days anymore, it's hard for me to remember if this was the first or the second. See Commissioner Neesmith indicating it is the second.
But I'll go ahead on. It's just a simple decades ago, I believe. The road was kind of off put into Robert Hardman Road, and it was straightened out, and so now both aligned, and the state was able to put in a red light, and so there's just a piece of property that's sitting there. And I would like to thank Barbara and the Skelton family for working together to get this done. And I do want to commend the Skeltons, because I do see her, and I believe it's her child, out there picking up trash on the end of Morton Road, and I just want to commend her for that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Would you like to make a motion for approval?
Motion for approval.
I'll second. I'll second.
All right. Got a motion from Commissioner Davenport, second from Commissioner Wright. Any further comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Motion carries. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Skelton, for your trash cleanup. All right. We have next our consent agenda, which are items 4 through 11. 4 through 11. Anyone like to discuss any agenda, any item on the consent agenda, or I will entertain a motion for approval of consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, we have two ordinances on the consent agenda this evening.
Thank you, Attorney Drake. Go ahead and read this for me if you could.
The first one's item 4, agenda item H4, an ordinance to amend the FY 2020 annual operating and capital budget for Athens-Clarke County, Georgia, so as to approve providing funding for additional expenses related to implementation of the new voting system amid the COVID-19 pandemic in the Board of Elections Department and for other purposes. And the second one is item H12. It's an ordinance to amend the FY 2020 annual operating and capital budget for Athens-Clarke County, Georgia, so as to provide grant funding, if awarded, from the Federal Aviation Administration and through the Georgia Department of Transportation for taxiway. I believe that I may have been removed. Is that correct, Mr. Mayor? Or is it still on there, H12?
Madam Clerk, can you advise, is 12 still on there?
No, 12 has been removed.
12 has been removed. Okay.
Just H4 then.
Okay. Would anyone like to discuss any of the items on the consent agenda this evening? All right. Entertain a motion for approval of consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All right. I've got a motion from Commissioner Edwards, a second from Commissioner Parker. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thank you, everyone. All right. 12 is removed. 13 also has been removed from the agenda. We're going to move on to item 14, which is the second and final reading of an ordinance under the home rule powers granted to Athens-Clarke County to amend the charter of the unified government with respect to what's in legal terms called the police power of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia, and for other purposes. For public understanding, police power here doesn't refer to policing by the police department, but in fact refers simply to the power of this government to do some things that currently are not embedded in our charter. Specifically, this provides us the opportunity to provide some relief to the public, and we wanted to make sure that there was clear authority through our charter to do that, particularly in the midst of this pandemic, so we can continue to deliver some aid and make sure we have done our legal crossing of T's and dotting of I's. So certainly be glad for any input or be happy to entertain a motion.
Need to read the ordinance, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Attorney Drake.
And again, that's to allow us to be able to have a mechanism to provide relief of indigent, impoverished, or distressed citizens in the unified government. So it reads, an ordinance under the home rule powers granted to Athens-Clarke County to amend the charter of the unified government of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia, with respect to the police power of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia, and for other purposes.
Thank you, Attorney Drake. All right, I entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
All right, have a motion for approval from Commissioner Davenport, a second from Commissioner Denson. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you all. Motion carries. We, of course, will be continuing to have some conversations about the range of aid that we will be delivering over the next many months tomorrow evening at our budget conversation, but this provides us a vehicle to make sure that we're doing that appropriately and legally. And so I appreciate your support, commissioners. All right, item number 15 is response to an RFP for the GIS-based permitting and development management system. Be happy to either get input or entertain a motion.
Can I say a word?
Yeah, go ahead, Commissioner Lake.
Benefit of the general public. This is our water rate structure, and staff has been able to take a new look at the tiers that will very likely.
That's the next item, Commissioner.
Oh, sorry, then I'm looking at the wrong thing.
Sorry. Yeah. This is 15. You're one step ahead, but I'll come back to you in a minute.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Make the motion. Go ahead and make the motion, Melissa.
Okay, I'll move. Wait, what are
the GIS-based permitting?
Oh yeah, the GIS thing. Oh yeah, that's really cool. That's going to be a really cool system to kind of pull all our development arms together. Yeah, I move that we adopt that.
I second.
Any further discussion?
I have a question.
Smith.
I believe I asked a question about that annual service fee. And maybe it was answered in writing. I don't know. It's been a crazy week. Blaine, do you mind giving me if you can recall what the question was?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay.
I do remember. And you, so the answer is the maintenance agreement is for, what we want to do is use that the first year. With our current system, we had an employee spend a lot of their time trying to work with that, and he's gone now. And so this is going to help us. We're going to evaluate it. We're going to train our staff up on it, and perhaps we can step away from it in year 2. But it will help, for them to really perform the function of an employee almost for us with that.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions or commentary on this item? All right. I just want to say I really appreciate staff moving this whole range of work forward. One of the things we did a number of years ago was create a central portal if somebody was involved in commercial development activities. Prior to that, for those who've been around for maybe 7 or 8 years or more, individual planning projects meant that you might have to go to a portal for public utilities, a portal for public works, one for building inspections. And so as the years have gone on, we've ever more centralized and simply made things better for the public and easier and more accessible. And so this is another big step in that direction. So thanks to staff for their work on this. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, we're moving on now to item 16. This is the rate structure amendments. So opportunity to take a fresh look at our water rate structure. After well over a decade into the tiered structure that we've been using, I think Commissioner Herron, maybe the only colleague here behind the rail who was around in the drought of 2007-8 as a public official in this jurisdiction. And so we had to pivot very quickly to make sure that we hung on to our resources then, and that's served us well. But of course, we've got many years of experience now, and public utilities staff has been in a position to bring back some amendments that I think are better crafted to the moment. So I am going to go ahead and I'll just ask Commissioner Link to continue a conversation from earlier.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that this new rate structure is very likely to save most homeowners a significant amount of money, possibly even more than a millage rollback will. So I think Commissioner Denson did the math on that. I don't know if he wants to jump in and view those numbers. But I just wanted to, make sure the public knows that this is something that hopefully will help folks out, especially in these times when people are taking a big hit. And I'll move that we adopt it.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Denson.
Yeah, and Commissioner Lincoln, I do agree. This is going to be this is a pretty big move, and I think I'm really proud of staff for coming up with this and bringing it to us. So we're looking at every water customer is going to have at least some savings, just from us removing the customer service fee or cutting it in half. Actually, more than cutting it in half. Every residential customer is going to have a savings of at least $52.92 a year. And if they also, or if they're doing water and sewer, they're going to have a savings of, I believe, $105.86 a year. Over $100. That's something that you're going to feel see in your bill immediately, right? If we pass this starting next month, I believe. Is that correct? Yes. Okay.
See Manager Williams nodding his head.
Okay. I believe so. And so this is savings that we'll be passing on immediately. But also, and there was a planned rate increase for next year, so we're canceling that, which is another savings of $1.6 million. And then because of the rate structure adjustments, which are going to make our water rates more equitable and put them more in line with other communities similar to ours throughout Georgia, it's going to be another savings of $1.56 million per customer. And as Commissioner Link alluded to, I went through and did the math for this is going to be for most homeowners. This is going to be a larger savings than if we were to do a rollback on the millage rate for a median house, a median home with a median value of $164,100, which is what it currently is for a median home. That rollback savings would be, if we were to do a rollback, you would see a savings of $33.94 a year. Yet, for people with water and sewer, with this, if we pass this, and I'm sure we will, that's going to be a savings of $105.86, plus potential savings, like I said, because of the rate restructure. So I'm very excited about this. This is going to help out a lot of people, and this is the direction we should be stepping. And I second Commissioner Link's motion.
Any other further input on this item?
I quite and I appreciate Commissioner Denson's the due diligence and breaking it down. I guess my concern is why does it have to be either and or? Why can't we do everything plus roll back the millage rate that Commissioner Denson has presented? We are living in some difficult times right now, and everything that we can do, we should do. If there's another way that we help citizens save money, I don't think that we should have to decide between the millage rate and water. Because all of that does not add up to what people are investing in this community. And I think that I don't know why we have to decide what is best when all of it is good. So if somebody could explain that to me, I would appreciate it.
Well, thanks for the input, Commissioner Thornton. Obviously, we definitely can do multiple things, although this item just specifically pertains to the public utilities rate. So if this passes and it seems poised to, everybody who has both water and sewer service would definitively save $105 a year in those service fee costs, and then prospectively more if they occasionally enter those higher tiers. And then, as I think you've just heard, would not be subject to the hike that was planned many years back, kind of in a series of small hikes that we do on an annual basis. So I think Commissioner Neesmith was up next, and then Commissioner Link.
Wait, hold on. I didn't finish. So then we still will be looking at the millage rate decrease in the future. That's what I want to be sure of.
Yes, ma'am. That's correct. Yes. Yep.
This does not cancel out that.
No. Tomorrow we'll continue our budget preparation for FY21.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, with a planned vote on June 16th for members of the public who are interested. Commissioner Neesmith?
I really don't need to say anything else. Commissioner Thornton did a great job. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Link?
Yeah, I was just going to clarify what you clarified. This is not an either or millage rate or water rate structure. The millage rate is a whole other discussion that we've yet to finish having. So that's still completely on the table.
Any other input on the components of this? Manager Williams, is there anything you'd like to add? This has, I know, been a long time in coming, and very much appreciate staff's work.
Thank you, Mayor, and I appreciate the kind words of the commissioner supporting our staff. I do want to point out that Director Frank Stevens has been working on this for a better part of a year and a half, and for anybody that hasn't really gotten involved with rate structures, and particularly the one that we had in place, which was good for water conservation in its time, it's extremely complicated, and I think he has. This isn't the first run. He's done this over and over and over and calculated to make sure that the ratepayers benefited from this. And I appreciate that you guys see the utility of this and are on the verge of approving it. So thank you to him and all of our staff, and thank you to y'all as well.
Thank you, Manager Williams. All right.
I'll move for approval.
Got a motion from Commissioner Neesmith. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
There is an ordinance.
All right. Attorney Drake, if you could read that for me, I'd appreciate it.
An ordinance to amend the code of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia with respect to water and sewer rates and for other purposes.
Great. Thank you, Attorney Drake. All right. I've got a motion from Commissioner Neesmith. I have a second from Commissioner Link. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Motion carries. Looking forward to that new bill. Okay. We are moving on to item number 17. 17 is T-Splosh project number 5, the Oconee Rivers Greenway project. We, I think, have discussed this at a work session and then at our agenda setting meeting. This is the future Oconee Street underpass that will allow somebody to move easily from Dudley Park to the Greenway component to the south without having to go around by Mama's Boy and the church and zigzag all over the place. So this will be clean and easy several years from now when this gets built. So any commissioner would like to provide input on this? Commissioner Neesmith? You're muted, sir.
Jerry, you're muted. Jerry.
Yes, ma'am. I got it now. We had a discussion about art and where would be an appropriate place. I mean, I'm all for this, but do we have any clarification about where art could be?
Manager Williams, can you let us know if staff's had a chance to take a look at that and talk maybe a little bit about how the development of the art project would happen?
My understanding is that, and I want to also point out, I think Commissioner Harrod had asked about art on the bridge as well. And I think both of those things we need to go to the Cultural and Affairs Commission for consideration and development. If we go back to them and ask them these very questions, I think we can find some clarification there.
That's fine. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Manager Williams. I think Commissioner Link had some input.
Yeah, I was just gonna put a note about the Cultural Affairs Commission. They're usually the ones that look at these projects. Once we approve them, I believe, then they take a look at the site and talk about site selection. So yeah, if anybody on the commission has a particular site that they'd like them to look at, it might be pertinent to get to them sooner rather than later.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Wright?
Thank you. Yeah, I think that Under the Bridge is a good opportunity for painting art. If you guys have been to where the supports for Loop 10 are going over the North Oconee River where the new bridge comes, there's somebody's doing some painting over there. I think it's maybe a dogwood or Cherokee rose, but it doesn't have to be really expensive, but it's appropriately placed, whether you're paddling down the road or on the trail, that anytime you look over and you have a smile from some artwork that's somewhere you're not expecting. So I think that once you're under the bridge, the opportunity with that new cement or whatever the structure is of the bridge might be an opportunity for something to be well placed there without interfering with coming and going. But this is a great project. I'm just hoping that we can stagger the two projects here at this juncture of a code, and then at the end where the improvements are going to be made at the loop. I know you sent us a timeline on that, Blaine. I appreciate it. But there's a lot of good stuff happening there, especially right now, the realignment of Old Winterville there as well. So I make a motion that we approve this.
Second.
Any further input? All right, we have a motion from Commissioner Wright, a second from Commissioner Parker. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you, everybody. All right, moving on to item number 18. This concerns a private pump station in Forest, Maine at 4395 Lexington Road. This is a development, part of which has lower topography and the Forest, Maine to get its septic service up to grade level to then go into our gravity system. So I think Commissioner Davenport, this is in your district.
Sorry, that mute button. Yeah, this has been a work in progress for quite some time. So I'm actually like ecstatic that there's some love coming to District 1, some development finally. So this place is there's some workforce houses that's going to be built right behind Walmart, which I think will add some beautification, some much needed housing on the east side. And just because of the topography, like you have stated, and how water flows with gravity, that a pump station is needed in this area. But I do have a question about the and Blaine, thank you for your follow up over the weekend. But can you explain about the water meters? Your response was kind of lengthy, but I didn't understand it well.
Okay, sure. Well, I think one of the questions that was asked was whether we try to discourage single meters, and we do require sub meters. So just for the general public, when you have an apartment building, often, these multifamily buildings are served by a master meter, and there are sub meters that are required. They don't look like what you'd find on the side of a house. You don't have to, where you have an exterior meter, but you are required to have them. So the water connection fees are based upon the size of the master meter rather than the number of units behind it. So I think the question was, born out of, and it may have been Commissioner Link asking it, if you don't have an individual meter, then you're not cognizant of how much you're using, and therefore you may not be aware enough to conserve water. But in the end, there are sub meters that are involved so that the billing is equitable, is my understanding.
Thank you.
Thank you, Manager Williams. Any further questions, or Commissioner Davenport, would you like to make a motion on this?
I motion to approve.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Let Melissa have it.
Got a motion from Commissioner Davenport, second from Commissioner Link.
I had a quick question, Kelly.
Commissioner Harrod, go ahead.
So just to follow up on what the manager said, it was actually, I had asked a question because drawing from the deep recesses of my brain, I was under the impression that we had, this is probably several years ago, we had talked about a policy where we would move away from kind of a single meter to having each unit have a meter, precisely for the purposes of encouraging water conservation, because if you're just getting charged a fixed amount on your water bill, you probably don't pay as much attention to it than if you're actually paying for the amount of water that you are using. And I thought we had implemented that as a policy, but are you saying that is not the policy, Mr. Manager?
And Commissioner Harrod, I apologize. You're correct. You did ask that. I did remember the intent, not the author. I apologize. Actually, state law requires multifamily units to have submeters and requires the landlord to apportion cost. So they are aware, everybody is paying their fair share and should be aware of their habits vis-a-vis the bills that they're paying. Am I answering your question?
You broke up just as you got to the important part about what state law says. So I guess my question is, are you saying that if there's a single, let's say you have a multifamily complex and it's got 50 units in it, for the sake of argument, are you saying that state law requires that each of those 50 units pay 1/50th of the water bill for that month? Or are you saying that each of those 50 units actually pays for the amount of water that they're using? So if one person uses twice as much water in a month as the person in the unit next to them, they pay twice as much for their water bill.
Well, my understanding is that the landlord is required to apportion the cost per the use, that the submeter reflects. And another reason for these submeters is that, our staff don't go into these buildings to read these meters. It's per individual use. So whatever that apartment uses is what they're paying their share of the bill, not 1/50th. Yes.
Help?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
All right. Perfect. All right. I think I've got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thank you, everybody, for that. Motion carries. All right. See, we are moving on to item number 19. Item 19 is the audit of the Athens-Clarke County Water Business Office. Commissioner Link, would you like to lead us into acceptance of that audit?
Yeah, and if anybody else on the audit committee wants to jump in, please do, and I'll ask Auditor Maddox to fill in. I hope everybody on the commission had a chance to take a good look at the audit. And it pointed out some issues, particularly billing and customer service, that have been some concern. And, with the transition to the automatic meter readers and some new software, we're confident that those will be getting addressed. There was also some issues pointed out with a longstanding contract that we want to see resolved. But if anybody else on the commission would like to, on the audit committee would like to jump in and add anything, and I'll propose that we accept it.
I just wanted to add, I think some of the questions and concerns that has caused that audit to go back have been highlighted and answered. So I do want to thank the audit committee for that work. Commissioner Link hit on about the long-term contract for the water department, which is why I wanted to see what other departments are using long-term contracts. So I don't think I would have been aware of that if I would not have been on the audit committee, but it does, it's something that we as a commission should be looking into, or at least be aware of. So I'm real pleased about the audit report, and I'll turn it back over to Commissioner Lane.
Thank you, Commissioner Thornton. Any other input on this item before I go back to Commissioner Lane? Commissioner Neesmith?
Yeah, is our utilities department going to not charge for the credit card processing fee?
Manager Williams, can you address that?
Yes, our recommendation is not to charge for credit card fees.
So that means the rest of us who do pay our bills in whatever way we do, including a simple bill pay from our bank, which doesn't cost anyone anything, having to carry the burden of those who choose to use a credit card. That's correct? How else could it be? And I have a serious problem with that.
Well, sir, that is correct, but there is some value added in that, and there is some high touch, high overhead that's associated with handling bad checks, multiple notifications regarding amounts and arrears, disconnects, reconnects, setting up, enforcing individual payment plans. All of that stuff happens with the credit card. The person's able to pay. We get the funds, and their services continued. So, all things being equal, Commissioner, staff feels like there is a little bit of subsidization going on, but it is to the greater utility and the ratepayers as a whole a savings.
Well, that makes sense, but I think we need an educational component here to make sure people realize they can do it with bill pay through their bank, and it's quite easy. So let's consider that we include on our website and in our billing website some instructions or suggestions that they use bill pay from their bank. And I'm not talking about a draft from the bank. I'm talking about where you order a check to be sent to you directly from your bank without any charge to anyone. That's all.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thanks, Manager Williams.
Can I just follow up on what Jerry said?
Go ahead, Commissioner Harrod.
Thank you. So I had the same question as Commissioner Neesmith did when we talked about this last time about, who might be subsidizing whom. I will say, for myself, I paid my water bill and stormwater bill simply through a direct draft from my bank account. But I do recall, this has been many years now, but I do recall when I set that up, it was a rather tortuous experience of having to, I think I had to go down physically and take a copy of not a blank check, cancelled check, and so they could get all of my banking information, this, that, and the other. when I've paid other things online, other bills online with other entities, in this day and age, you can just kind of go onto their website and put in your the bank sorting code and your bank account number and the amount, and everything's done. So where are we in terms of our own public utilities, in terms of if you do want to pay the bill simply through a bank draft that comes out automatically out of your checking account, what's the process of actually going down and doing that? Because as I say, I probably did it 15 years ago, and I would hope it's been improved since then, but maybe not. That's a question for the manager.
Okay. Well, it is. It's been 7.5 years for me, Commissioner, as well, and I'm sure that we've made it easier because we've had an increase in folks, but that's not evidence enough for what you're asking. So, if I might, I will find out that process. I will share that with y'all and Mayor, just so that the viewing public can benefit from this. Perhaps at the end of an ensuing meeting, we can discuss that.
That'd be great. Go ahead and we'll make sure that's part of the manager's report upcoming. Any other questions or input about the audit? Commissioner Link?
Yeah, there was one other thing that came up that I guess I should point out to the whole commission, because it might be something we might want to bring up with our state delegation. There's an issue with unclaimed balances. If somebody moves out, cuts off their water, and they have a balance left that we would owe them, that the public utilities would owe them, and they can't find them, which in this town is actually a fairly common occurrence, being that it's a college town and we have a lot of transition. That money goes to the state. That leftover unclaimed balance goes to the state of Georgia. And I've kind of had issue. I mean, it's state law. And I wonder if we shouldn't approach our delegation about that, because I feel like it's money that we could reinvest in our own community. It came out of our community, and yeah, it actually belongs to the customer, but there's been due diligence in attempting to find that customer, and they fall off the face of the earth. So I don't know. That's something, and I think the amount came to about $400,000, but that's over a decade or so. That's just something we might want to roll around and take a look at.
Thanks, Commissioner. Any other input on this? I'd certainly entertain a motion for acceptance of this audit.
I'll move. I thought I moved before. Yeah, I'll move that we accept this audit.
Your second?
Second.
Got a motion from Commissioner Link. I think I heard a second from Commissioner Denson. All in favor of audit acceptance?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I think that was Russell at second.
Oh, okay. There were multiple echoes through my head here. All right. Motion carries.
Yeah, that's right. That was me. Thanks.
All right. Yeah. Clerk Spratlin, if you note, motion from Commissioner Link, second from Commissioner Edwards, motion carries. All right. We are moving on with two more items, 20 and 21, both of which kind of follow up on some of our North Downtown work. Item 20 is adoption of a resolution accepting the Athens Downtown Master Plan with amendments related to implementation of the North Downtown project. So the Commission previously saw this master plan, and this provides some amendments again so that we can apply for low-income housing tax credits. Let's see. I see Commissioner Link.
Yeah, I'll jump on this since it's my district, and I do have some things to say about it. This master plan was presented to the Commission after a great deal of public input. God, it's probably been 6 or 7 years now, and we're finally getting around to actually accepting it. And a lot has changed downtown, a great deal. I mean, there are multiple extremely large-scale apartment complexes that have been built since this plan was adopted, or I guess initially accepted, or and then we have another new complex going up that we just approved tonight. We've got the complete wholesale redevelopment of North Athens. We're considering a historic district for West Downtown. There's so much going on. I feel like this plan should be revisited. This committee that is supposed to discuss this plan along the way has not met in 4 years or so. So I just want to ask that we, call a meeting of this committee to just have the opportunity to take a good look at the plan and discuss how downtown is developed, and see if there's any amendments to the plan that could be made, or what that process even is. I'm not even sure if there is such a process. So just think we really need to lay this plan out again and discuss it in public, and at least let the public know that it does exist. I'm just making that proposal, and with that, I'll go ahead and move that we adopt the plan. We accepted it before, and now we are adopting.
We're actually accepting. We determined that since that was in concert with our normal protocol, that's what we were going to do.
Okay, what was the initial?
We were an accepting commission. Yes.
What was the initial presentation? Was it just a presentation of the?
It was accepted then. We just have to do it again in order for the vote.
It has to be done within the last 5 years.
Oh, okay. It has to be every 5 years. Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and move that we go ahead and accept it.
I'll second.
All right, we've got a motion from Commissioner Link, second from Commissioner Neesmith. I think Commissioner Link made this point at the agenda setting meeting too, that there have been certainly some on the ground realities that at least ought to be captured. I think one of the things that we talked about was getting a memo from the planning department just to have a bullet point list of those things. And I certainly like the idea of figuring out what some of the elements are that we may want to invest some energy in. One of the things that I certainly remember Jack Crowley saying when he was the consultant on this project is that this is very much like a buffet. You can pile up a big plate at once, or you can take a little plate with just a couple of items. And so we definitely have seen several items come off, and a lot more to be done. Some of it obviously even embedded in our SPLOST 2020 plan, such as the Jackson Street Art Walk. So any other input on this?
Mr. Mayor.
Go right ahead, Commissioner Harrod.
Thank you. So just for my own clarification, what we're voting on right now is not accepting the downtown master plan. It's accepting the amendments to allow the north downtown redevelopment of Bethel and include that. Is that correct? Because I seem to recall we accepted the downtown master plan 5 or 6 years ago when Jack Crowley and others first produced it.
I believe that's right. And I'll let the attorneys speak to this. I think we are essentially re-accepting with those addendums. Attorney Drake, is that accurate, or is it simply the addendums themselves that we're accepting?
We are approving the re-acceptance of it with the addendums. We coordinated with Clerk Spratland. She was not able to find where it was ever actually accepted by the commission. There was a committee appointed, implementation committee, by the previous mayor, but we could not find any record of acceptance. So we are accepting it with the amendments tonight.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Any other input on this item? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, final item, again related to North Downtown Athens, is the intergovernmental contract between the Unified Government of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia, and the Athens Housing Authority to provide for the North Athens downtown property acquisition. So certainly entertain a motion or answer any questions. Anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion if nobody else will. I believe this is Commissioner Thornton's district, but I'll go ahead and move that we enter that agreement so we can move forward with this redevelopment of Bethel and make a better life and a better community for the folks who live there, and for a lot more folks who will be able to live there, and businesses that hopefully will be able to move into the area.
Got a motion from Commissioner Link.
I'll second.
Second from Commissioner Thornton. Any other input on this item? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, moving on to new business. I first need a motion for suspension of rules.
So move.
Second.
All right, I've got a motion for suspension of rules from Commissioner Link, second from Commissioner Edwards. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, all the rules are suspended right now. All right, item number 22 is the Legislative Review Committee recommendation regarding review the ordinance referencing loud or unruly gatherings in residential neighborhoods. Commissioner Wright, as chair, would you like to kick us off in this conversation?
Yes, I'd be glad to. And thank you for assigning that to the committee in November. I believe there was a house that Commissioner Neesmith and Davenport worked on addressing, and it came up as maybe an issue with short-term rentals when actually it's not how a place is rented, but how the people who are renting it are acting and behaving. And we believe that this work that was done with those two gentlemen as a draft with our attorney's office captured some steps that can be made when someone has complaints in a residential area about loud and unruly behavior, not necessarily who's living there or who's related to who in the house, but specifically addressing the behaviors. So it's coming forward for review and acceptance if the group so wishes. And anybody else in LRC, please chime in.
Other comments?
I don't have no official comment. I think that Commissioner Wright gave the history on how it got to this point for the full commission. I don't know, Kelly, if you're ready to get a motion, but I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay. Any other input on this side?
I make a motion that we accept this, and I have it as a tool for the community. And I hope that this also allows us, Kelly, that the next thing you'll do is assign to committee that we can get rid of the outdated related people in single family homes, because I think it's the behavior. We've tackled some of the bad behavior that caused that ordinance to be put on the books years ago, parking in the front yard and different behavior things like that. So I hope this helps us get to that next step.
I'll second it.
All right. So we've got a motion and a second. This is an ordinance update. So if you could read that ordinance, Attorney Drake.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. An ordinance to amend Chapter 4 or 5 of the Code of Ordinances of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia, to provide regulations related to loud or unruly gatherings in residential areas and for other purposes.
All right.
May I, Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead, Commissioner, please.
Yeah, it was one particular house that got Patrick's attention, and we worked together on this with the help of our attorney. But after this came to light when we were discussing it back in November, a number of people contacted me, and I think Melissa had a contact or two, about the same kind of problems, and they weren't even short-term rentals. It was basically absentee landlords, and the police had no power to really break up a loud and unruly gathering, which includes public drunkenness, nudity, drug use, serving alcohol to minors, those kinds of behaviors. And this gives the police the power to break up the party and to find the owner of the house, wherever he or she may be. So I think it's an excellent tool, and I agree with Commissioner Wright that this might be what we really need rather than the more than two unrelated persons in a household ordinance that we have now. So thank you. Patrick and I would appreciate your support on this.
Yes, I've been raising my hand, Mayor.
Oh, I apologize, Commissioner Davenport. I saw it up and I thought it was from an earlier item. Go right ahead.
But no, I would just like to thank LRC, and this is going to be a great victory for residents who may have unruly neighbors. So this is a win-win for all citizens of Athens-Clarke County, residents. I'm sorry, of Athens-Clarke County.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Link.
Yeah, I just want to second that. I do have issues with that no more than two unrelated rule. I really believe it's discriminatory and unnecessary. It is the behavior that we're targeting, and there is a particular issue where even in neighborhoods that are zoned multifamily, where these students are allowed to pack in, there's not much teeth to shut down some of the unruly behavior. And when you have a house where people are constantly moving in and out, even if they get cited, it's only a few months before it's a whole nother batch. So it doesn't really put a stop to the behavior. And so I think that element of hunting down the owner and making the owner accountable for the behavior of their tenants, so they can use their power as a landlord to clamp down if necessary. I think that will help a lot. So I appreciate the LRC taking this on.
Thanks, Commissioner. Any other input on this item? All right, we have a motion and a second. Attorney Drake has read the ordinance. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, may the landlords among you have great tenants. All right, moving on to next item of new business. Next is the ordinance for the fourth declaration of local emergency. This would essentially carry our local emergency order through the beginning of August. My intent is that we have some reasonable length extensions, and certainly given the numbers that I think all of us are looking at least on a daily and several time daily basis, the experience of the healthcare apparatus, and that all of us are having trying to maintain safety. It's I think a viable tool to extend this. So I'd be interested for any input or certainly entertain a motion. Commissioner Parker.
Thank you, Mayor Gertz. For clarification of just how emergency orders have been used recently, was the emergency order on Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening, the extension of the one related to COVID?
It was not. It was standalone. I apologize. Say again. You broke up for a second.
It was declared separately.
It was separate. Correct.
And so, can things like curfews be declared in a somewhat unilateral fashion, as was the case Sunday under this declaration of emergency?
Attorney Drake, could you discuss the sort of correlation between what may be a one-time incident and then this 2-month extension?
Well, the commission has a liberty under the as the manager or the commission has the right under the Code of Ordinances, emergency management provisions, to adopt emergency declarations. If an emergency declaration is in effect at the next regular meeting, it has to be renewed by this commission for it to continue in effect, or it's rescinded. So the other one, that one's only for 48 hours, so it is going to expire by its own terms. But so the question you're answering, Ms. Parker, Commissioner, you could propose your own ordinances. The action of the commission would overrule any action.
Well, Judd said another way. I think that the way that the ordinances and the structure of the government is set up, that there is certain responsibilities or authority delegated to the manager when a quick decision is needed. And I think, Judd, everything was done appropriately.
Absolutely.
This past week, and certainly anything done like that, we want to be in communication with y'all. And I think there was at the time some concerns, and we hope to share some more information with you tomorrow that can help provide some additional context for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, Commissioner Denson.
Thank you, Mayor. And Commissioner Parker's comments just brought up a question that I was having. This is more just also like in practice, trying to have an understanding of how this would work. So if I remember correctly, the way this works is that we during this emergency order, we're giving over some power to the manager and or the mayor to be able to take some of those actions, but the commission is able to vote to rescind those actions or order, I believe, correct?
That is correct, Commissioner.
Okay, and that's what I thought. And so I guess one concern that I have, and obviously, thank goodness, these things have not happened often. So I think it's the first time that there's been a situation where I think my question applies to. But in those situations, say when an order is put in place late at night or something like that because of an incident, what would be the protocol the process for the commission to be able to, if they decided they disagreed with that, to actually be able to vote to rescind that?
Well, there'd have to be an emergency meeting called, or a special call meeting, depending on the urgency of the meeting to vote to rescind the action.
Okay.
You know, an urgency meeting, 24 hours, less than 24 hours notice. A special call meeting requires 24 hours.
Okay.
So I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
So are you saying, Attorney Drake, that there is a written protocol somewhere?
Yes, Commissioner Thornton. The emergency management declarations ordinance that was recently approved by this commission, I'd be happy to send it out again, sets forth this process.
So you said, and you said it was recently approved by this commission?
That's correct.
Yeah, Commissioner, we approved that the same evening as the first specific emergency order because we needed a change in just the underlying ordinance that allowed for these emergency orders to happen.
Well, we need to make sure at that time that we had the authority to do a shelter in place. Our other ordinance, as you'll recall, we discussed was a little out of date, so we updated it to make it more current to be able to deal with the crisis that we had at hand related to COVID-19.
Okay, and I guess I'm wondering. Well, I'll wait. Attorney Drake, if you could send that or show me where I would look it up myself because I just want to be clear on. Yeah, I just want to be clear. That's all.
Understood. I'll send it to everybody tomorrow morning.
And so for the public benefit, because this is specifically related to the pandemic environment we're in, this will allow the manager to continue to defer payment of some fees and also continue to allow for the to-go beer and wine that establishments have been able to profit from in this challenging time.
Mr. Mayor, I think it is important to enlighten the public as to what this rather short resolution does do, and then the things it doesn't do. We're not extending shelter in place. Are we extending closing non-essential businesses?
We now are preempted from doing anything in the business regulatory environment, given the governor's overriding order. But I think you're right, Commissioner Neesmith. So we mentioned fee opportunities and alcohol, and this does allow all regulatory fee deadlines to be extended to August 11th. And so that gives some relief to businesses, sort of much in the same frame that we were talking about with public utilities earlier.
And the occupation tax.
Correct.
Okay.
I think Jerry alluded to what I was trying to ask. That was my point.
Very good.
All right. Any additional
Motion to approve.
All right. I've got a motion from Commissioner Neesmith, second from Commissioner Davenport. Attorney Drake, do you need to read an ordinance here?
Yes. An ordinance for the fourth declaration of a local state of emergency related to COVID-19 and for other purposes.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Attorney. All right. Item 23 on new business is simply a placeholder.
Do we need to vote?
Yeah.
Oh, I apologize. We do need to vote. Ready to move on. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Item 23 is a placeholder for adoption of the FY21 operating and capital budget, establishment of 2020 property tax rates, approving a schedule of fees and charges for FY21 and other purposes. Many of you probably know that typically what we would do is approve the budget the first Tuesday in June, which is tonight. But given the crisis environment that we are in, we need a little more time and wanted to make sure that we were doing the best work we possibly could on the budget. So that's been moved back 2 weeks so that we could have some time to contemplate the expenditures that may change somewhat when you contemplate where we are now in June versus where we were when budget preparation began in November, December. So, Commissioner Wright?
Thank you, Kelly. On that note, I feel like there's still more time that we would need to accurately develop our budget, determine the factors involved with that we need to know what the state is going to be doing. And I had asked, and maybe it's in the emails, that, and I hadn't spotted it yet. I was wondering how the timeline moves forward for state gets further into it. I think they start in June 15, their session, but it seems odd that we would be approving ours before we learn what they are cutting. Kelly, do you want to, and Blaine, can you guys chime in on that? And I'd like to hear what others think, if there's more space that we can move down in June and still meet our deadline.
I did speak briefly with one of our state delegation members today, and so that they are returning to service in some form or fashion in the General Assembly June 15th. They're constitutionally mandated to approve a budget by the end of June because their fiscal year, like ours, starts July 1st. What I will say is, while there is some co-funding of entities like DFACS or the library system or the health department by us and by the state, I don't know how consequential state modifications could be in what we do. And certainly we are also in something of this uncertain environment about what the next round of congressional stimulus is going to look like. The HEROES Act that passed the House, I think 2.5 weeks ago, would have provided for significant state and local support, north of $50 million just in this calendar year for Athens-Clarke County, if looking at their funding formula. So we're definitely in foggy terrain. I wish this was a clearer pass. Manager Williams, if you want to offer any thoughts, certainly be glad for that.
Sure. And I'll send out, I was going to send out this evening before I left, the answers to your questions from the last session that staff has compiled, and one of which was Commissioner Wright's question about this. So the mayor's correct.
Okay.
The state is required to adopt their budget by July 1st, balanced budget. And of course, the charter calls for us to, for you to adopt a budget by June 30th of each year. Okay. So in the, some things that we've come to learn is that the governor, we're expecting him to submit a revised revenue estimate in the next week or so. And then the Senate will consider their version of the budget when they return in person, which is a little over a week from now. You are set to consider the budget on June the 16th. Now, just by way of scale, if you will, the amount of revenue that we receive from the state is about $1.4 million. And that's split up over three things. Most of all of that comes from the inmate supplements that we receive from the Georgia Department of Corrections. That's about $1.3 million. And then there's juvenile court judges supplement and inmate clothing reimbursement, which together total less than $50,000. The number of grants that we get from the state as well, even with the 14% reduction across the board, which is going to affect many of our constitutional officers who, but by and large, the overall general fund is this, it won't have a large impact directly from the revenue we receive. Now, the services that are provided and how we partner with those state agencies will be impacted, but the revenue we receive will not be greatly impacted.
Can I just add something?
My hand is up too.
Well, let me just wrap up that I really appreciate that. And I think that if we can make sure we're talking about this openly and honestly with each other with tomorrow's budget, but since this is in here and highlighted how we already have adjusted some, I think that tempering the flavor of what happens in the Capitol, and they're just is relevant to us proceeding. So thanks for bringing that forward, and I look forward to hearing what others.
Mayor?
You're muted, Kelly.
Thanks. I'll hear from Commissioner Herod, and then Commissioner Thornton, and then Commissioner Link.
I think Avita was actually ahead of me, so she wants to go now, and then I'll go after her.
Go ahead, Avita.
I just had two comments. I know we're talking about dollars from the state in different forms of revenue, but I think we need to look beyond that, because a 14% cut across the state will impact more than the dollar amount. We may see cuts with staff that work for the state. There's going to be a ripple effect. So I don't want to minimize that situation. There may be a trickle down effect with those cuts that we need to be prepared for, or at least paying attention to. The other thing, I did talk to Manager Williams, and I feel a little bit hope. I don't like that deadline either, but I am hopeful, and correct me or help me, Manager Williams. We are still able to modify our budget throughout the year or as needed. So we can make that vote from whatever that vote is, but we can make adjustments. We just got to meet that deadline. Is that right?
That's correct. I mean, there's in any given year, if you'll remember, there's often a budget amendment that's attached to an ordinance that you're making a change, whether it's accepting a grant or something like that. So that is fully within your purview to revisit the budget and make any amendments that you see necessary.
Andy?
Thank you. Well, actually, Commissioner Thornton more or less said what I was going to say. I mean, the governor is going to come back with another revenue estimate in the next week or so, which is what the manager said, which is obviously going to affect the state budget. And we may only get $1.5 million or so directly from the state, but we have a lot of state agencies here in Athens. Obviously, the University of Georgia is a main one. We have other state agencies. The school system gets money from Atlanta, and so if the 14%, just the budget cuts for places like UGA and other state agencies here in town, the state patrol, other types of agencies in town, if they persist, that is going to have a much bigger impact, I think, on our local economy than simply $1.5 million or so that we get as a direct payment from the state. So I think it's important for us to have, keep our eyes on the ball when it comes to thinking about what's that going to mean particularly for our sales tax revenues. So that's, but Avita more or less said what I was going to say.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Link?
Yeah, thank you. I know the mayor mentioned the HEROES Act, and I just want to remind everyone to please reach out to our senators. We have 2 senators on the ballot who are running for election this year, so they might actually listen to us if we contact them. That bill passed the House, but it hasn't passed the Senate yet. Mitch McConnell declared it dead on arrival. And it's $3 trillion in federal aid to be dispersed, not only individual checks to folks who are still out of work, economic stimulus checks in general, but that aid directly to local and state government, which would be essential to us, especially if we're in the face of massive state cuts. So I want to urge everybody to please urge your constituents to do that outreach as well. And I just noticed today the NAACP put out an action alert urging the Senate to pass that act. It's really, really vital to, especially a lot of those social services that are going to get slashed, and people are already in a really, really bad situation. And to slash those services even more is just going to continue the devastation and the pain for many. So let's make sure that the Senate hears us.
Commissioner Neesmith?
Yeah, I was wondering, well, first of all, any budget we pass probably will have to be amended one way or the other, up or down. I know that the state cut to Department of Behavioral Health and Disabilities is scary. It's going to affect all of the community service boards. They may lose positions. We may lose our crisis intervention team, at least 1-2 members of it. So these are all reasons that I think we need to see a budget that does as much millage rate rollback as we can. We can adjust it later if we need to, but I think we need to have a very prudent budget that gives as much relief as we can to our citizens rather than raising their taxes. Now, Mr. Mayor, I don't know whether you want to try to tackle putting a budget like that together, or a few of us commissioners need to get together and see what we think should come out of the budget in order to do that millage rate rollback. That's your choice at this time. I think, quite frankly, that you and the staff have more insight into these things and could come up with something, whether you find it distasteful or not, that does a millage rate rollback. But if you don't, then I invite other commissioners to join me in taking a look at the budget and making some proposals.
So at the last budget session, there were some large-scale items that I think were recognized as items that could be deferred or modified. That would achieve at least some of what you're describing, Commissioner. So I think tomorrow, what we have to do at our budget work session is coalesce around those items around which there's majority commission support.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Denson?
Thank you, Mayor. And I just wanted to try to clarify and make sure Manager Williams can make sure that I'm correct in this. But while we can amend our budget going forward through budget amendments, there's a lot of larger items, especially revenues, that we're not able to amend. That's correct. We can't amend our millage rate, things like that moving forward.
That's correct. And the tax assessor mentioned that, Commissioner Denson, at the last meeting. You're right. Once the millage rate is set for the year, there's a lot of other things that happen in the wake of that. And I would argue too that there are certain things that you set into motion with the budget that are hard to undo. Certainly, if you issue any employee compensation changes, health insurance allocations, things of that nature. But if it comes to the point of, and I think this is where folks are really getting to, the uncertainty that lies ahead of us, if revenues come in less than anticipated, can you take actions to mitigate the impact on the budget by cutting expenses, whether that's through, furlough days or things of that nature. Those are things that there are strategies in the wake of adopting the budget that can be done later in the year to change the trajectory of the budget.
Anything else yeah, go ahead, Commissioner Thornton.
Blaine is correct as he just stated. And I want to add that, yes, if we need to make budget amendments and cuts throughout the year because of some unknown something, that's one thing. But I also am saying that we should be practical and pragmatic in the budget from the beginning. All the things that we don't need, it should be cut out. We should plan for the worst and hope for the best. So I agree with Blaine's explanation, but it does some things we may just need to put on hold until times get better. So there's two caveats for me. Being prepared if an emergency happens and being able to make those amendments, but going into the budget knowing that this is some difficult times and we need to be very prudent in how we put our dollars in there.
And I'd like to totally agree with Commissioner Thornton in that it can be problematic to cut services mid-year for sure. And this is the time to go ahead and try and get it as close to what you want as possible. I just wanted to say that it's not an absolute. And again, we'll be researching strategies that if our revenues don't come in as anticipated, that we could employ later in the year. But Commissioner Thornton, you're right. This is the time to go ahead and set the course for the year, if you can.
Thanks, everybody. Any more input? We've got plenty of time tomorrow night, of course, to dig into some of the details of this. All right. We're going to go ahead and move on. Item 25 is a resolution urging all employees, businesses, residents, and visitors in ACC to wear a face covering. In one of our earlier declarations, we had encouraged people to do this and held off a little bit on placing this on the agenda because I wanted to ensure that we were doing something practical to advance this cause. And so I want to be able to announce tonight that we've ordered 50,000 masks for members of the public that we've been able to fund through the federal dollars that flowed through public transit. And so we're going to be distributing those, focused first on those high density public places, much as our public transit buses and the courthouse, which is now open, and visitation to other public facilities, and then more broadly to the public at large, including high concentration spaces such as downtown. So glad we were able to stand this up. I very much thank Commissioner Link, Commissioner Edwards' earlier work on this, and every member of the commission, and certainly staff who did a lot of research. I've joked in recent weeks that any vendor who ever did anything at all in the public sector, whether they provided widgets or rubber bands or paper clips or server space or paved roads, suddenly has become a PPE vendor. And so it took us a little while to put together the right vendor to acquire this from, and we were assured that we were able to spend funds on that. So that's associated with this, but this is the resolution that will work in concert with that mask distribution. So any input on this item? Commissioner Link.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, for bringing this forward on the agenda. I've been certainly advocating for this for a while. I strongly believe that everybody should wear a mask in especially any indoor public environment and any outdoor environment where you certainly are unable to stay a good distance from other people. It's not necessarily for your own health, but it is for the health of others, folks who do have compromised immune systems, diabetics, heart conditions, cancer survivors, the elderly, of course. I can't overemphasize how important it is, and it's a real shame, more than a shame. It's actually very dangerous that there is a movement out there that is anti-mask, and it's become a political issue. It's not a political issue. It is a health issue. It is a public health issue. It is a personal health issue. It is can be a matter of life or death for someone you love. So I'm really, really excited about this, and I want to urge the rest of the commission to do whatever you can to get the word out. And to reach out to local businesses and let businesses know that for the health and safety of their workers, they can refuse service to people who customers who do not wear a mask. It is not against the law to do so, especially if you post that masks are required in your businesses. And there's some businesses out there that do it. Especially some of the national chains like Fresh Market and Trader Joe's, they are really good about enforcing mask wearing. And it's not necessarily a mask, just a simple bandana over your mouth and nose. It will do the job in keeping that virus from spreading from you if you might have it, and it could very well protect you if you were to come in contact with it. So I'm very, very passionate about this issue. And I hope that we can come up with some really creative ways to spread the word, fun ways to spread the word. I urge everybody to change your profile picture, which I just took one tonight, so I'll be posting that, and do whatever you can to get the word out. It's very, very important. And I think it really, really terrifies me that, now that the governor's orders have expired and restaurants are opening up and bars have opened up this week, people seem to think that it's back to life as usual, life as normal, and it's not. It won't be until we truly have a vaccine for this virus. So we all need to be extremely careful, continue washing our hands, keep away from folks. If you have found yourself in an environment where you've been close to people, you need to self-quarantine and, to make sure you're not getting sick, especially if you might end up, being around folks who are vulnerable. So just keep in mind, this virus is not over, and our cases are spiking, and they're spiking across the nation. And it is a matter of life and death. So thank you.
Commissioner Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would agree with what Commissioner Link just said. The science shows that wearing masks cuts down on transmission. And it saddens me that at least on social media, I see a lot of people who have been saying, well, we need to open up the economy, are also people who seem to be sometimes reticent to wear face masks. The quickest way of opening up the economy is stopping the spread of the virus by wearing a face mask. So I think if you just do one simple thing, wearing a face mask and washing your hands, is a really good thing to do to be able to open up the economy as we move through this. But I do actually have a very specific question, and I'm 100% in support of the resolution. But you know me, I'm kind of get down in the details. And so the resolution on page 499 of the PDF, where it has 4 points, and point number 1 says, children under 6 years old are not urged to wear a face mask. And then it says accompanying parents/guardians are required to assure these children stay properly distanced. I think that goes a little bit beyond our authority to require. Is that simply a misprint? Should it simply have been are urged, or is there a reason that says require and the other 3 just say urge?
You may be correct, Commissioner Harrod. It may be that we have to use that urge or encourage language, kind of given where we are in terms of preemption. Attorney Drake, you want to address that?
Yeah, I would agree. We made all the other. There was a few other places where Commissioner Link issued an issue. She got almost all of them. I apologize that we missed that one. It should be urged.
Okay, I would suggest that we just change that one word and then that we approve this.
I would agree.
Is that a motion, Commissioner?
Yes.
I'll second that.
All right, I've got a motion from Commissioner Harris, second from Commissioner Link. Commissioner Neesmith?
Yeah, I read some research recently that seemed credible. We've been told that face masks don't protect you as much as they protect other people. I believe the research is showing now that it protects you as well. If you walk through a cloud of spittle, that the face mask will help filter that spittle before it goes into your mouth and nose, assuming you have the face mask on your nose as well. So I just want people to know that they are protecting themselves to a large degree by wearing a face mask as well as other people.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to ignite some continued conversation over where we might be able to act to require the donning of face masks to help prevent the pandemic. We acted to require them at the Athens Farmers Market, and I know we mentioned requiring them on the buses. Now that we have 50,000 of these masks, this seems like a great moment to go ahead and put down some requirements for when people come into municipal buildings or when people ride the bus. I'd love to hear my colleagues' reaction, or maybe just present that idea and move on it, hopefully. Thanks.
Attorney Drake, could you talk about that just a little bit?
Yes, we have today sent the manager guidance related to requiring masks in governmental buildings, and are working with him on that now.
Thank you for that, Attorney. All right, so that is forthcoming. I've got Commissioner Thornton next.
Now I have to unmute again. I am 100% supportive of this resolution for several reasons. One, because of the safety message that this local government is sending to the community. But I am also supporting it because I know that Commissioner Link and Commissioner Edwards have really led this passionate issue. And I know when I got the call about the resolution a couple of weeks ago, I kind of backed off because I really think that sometimes even in an emergency, sometimes you got to be able to think about it. But more importantly, this resolution also is accompanied with a solution. And a solution of these masks it speaks a lot than more than just words on the paper. So I want to thank Commissioner Link and Commissioner Edwards for being patient and taking the time to put some teeth into this and make this very meaningful. So I'm going to 100% support it with the changes that Commissioner Harris mentioned.
Any other input on this item? Commissioner Wright.
Thank you for seeing my hand up. I wanted to get some more clarification on, you started this off, Kelly, by telling us how the disbursement of these masks is going to happen. But what about, will there be stuff on the website for people to inquire? You've got that small business maybe that really does want to have that requirement, but they also need the supplies of the mask to get to this requirement for safety. How are we advertising the availability of these, besides what you said with the transit?
Manager Williams, can you go ahead and address that for me?
Well, at this point, Commissioner Wright, we are ordering a sizable number of masks. We ordered last week, hoping they will get here to be able to provide any customers, including transit riders, masks so that they can comply and be safe. The mayor and some of you have mentioned the desire to provide masks to the public in general. Right now, we have not ordered enough to provide businesses in Clarke County with that, and the mayor and I have discussed various ways of distributing masks, and that is something that I think we should talk about certainly tomorrow night, because it could, there's some budget implications on spending some funds for that.
Okay, and I think that piggybacks on what Commissioner Edwards started off with, and it sounds like this is one step, and we'll just keep taking the steps that it takes to get the supplies and then cover what we're requiring within our facilities, I guess, is the starting point of our domain or our lane, so to speak. But I agree with how Ovita summarized this, and was happy that Melissa got a called meeting of the Board of Health where we report in this document as well to keep people and being good examples of the mask wearing and its importance for everybody in the public health realm. And I look forward to voting for it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other input on this item? All right, we have a motion with modification of that one word urge is provided by Commissioner Harrod. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, so we continue to ask the public, please, as you've heard tonight, we're in this together. We're out for each other's good health. So I'm looking forward to moving forward. All right, Item number 28 is appointment of myself to the Joint Development Authority that we've just stood up with Athens-Clarke County and Winterville. And the first meeting is on the calendar. I want to let everybody know when that is. That is tomorrow at 10:30. But we needed to go through this formal process. So any input on this?
Actually, Kelly, I have input because I've been questioning this since I've been on the commission. So with this vote, is this going to be a vote then actually tonight?
That's right.
All right. And so we have not had a seat at the table since when? Or is this a reappointment?
This is the new organization that's the Joint Development Authority with Athens-Clarke County and Winterville. The first project of which is
wrong committee. I'm sorry. Click off.
Okay, never mind. All right. Any other input on this item? I'd entertain a motion for approval.
I'll move.
So moved. Second.
All right, I've got a motion from Commissioner Link, called a second from Commissioner Edwards. All in favor?
Aye.
Yes. Any opposed? All right. Okay, we're going to move on to reports. One item.
We need to dump 26. I think we skipped number 26.
Oh, I appreciate it. 26, I apologize. We're going to move back to 26. This is the supplemental funds received through the federal government for a series of items, including PPE, temperature checks, and safety gear for coronavirus-related support for our police department. Any input on this item? Motion for approval. Yeah, Commissioner Parker.
Thank you, Mayor Garrett. So this is just for the benefit of the general public. This is specifically for protective equipment, sterilization, any sort of special equipment that's necessary for responding to the pandemic.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so
It's an ordinance, Mr. Mayor.
so an ordinance, that's right. Attorney Drake, you go ahead and read that for me.
An ordinance to amend the FY 2020 annual operating capital budget for Athens-Clarke County, Georgia, so as to provide grant funding and authorization for awarding for the coronavirus emergency supplemental funding program FY 2020 formula grant for equipment and supplies for the prevention, preparation, response to coronavirus and for other purposes.
Thank you, Attorney Drake. Any other further questions or input on this item? Motion for approval.
So moved.
I'll second.
All right, got a motion from Commissioner Parker, a second from Commissioner Link. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thanks for catching that. I really appreciate it. All right, I just have a single item tonight, and it is an assignment to the county attorney's office. Many folks, I think Commissioner Edwards, Commissioner Denson, Commissioner Parker, obviously were present at the Sunday rally. And when I stood listening to the speakers, I thought one of the most compelling was a woman who was a recent graduate of the University of Georgia, and she described her dismay at repeatedly crossing Broad Street in front of the Confederate memorial that sits there. And it's my belief that it should no longer sit there. And so I'm directing the county attorney's office tonight to develop the most effective plan for movement of the Confederate memorial on Broad Street. And whatever that most effective mechanism is one we will implement this year. We're going into budget conversations tomorrow, and I think we're going to do a lot of great work around better systems for the public at large. But systemic improvement, whether it's in behavioral health or other matters, takes research and planning and organization and implementation cycle after cycle. Can tell you versus that continuous improvement cycle, I've rented a crane before, poured concrete with my hands. That's easy to do. I think it's time we do that. And so I'd like us to look at another vista. And so that is direction that the county attorney's office now has. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to the manager for his report.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to follow up on a question earlier about setting up a bank draft. And just real quick, Mayor, I'll share a screen with you if that's okay.
Please.
For the public. And what we have here is just a one-page bank draft application. It's very easy to get to on our website, or you can call for directions. But if you go to pay your water bill page on the website, you can fill this form out. You can mail it with a voided check or drop it off. But in the near future, what we hope to get to with Click2Gov, which is a platform that Stormwater already uses, would enable somebody to set up an account remotely. And we hope to get to a point where we can establish the bank draft without the form and without a voided check, whether through Click2Gov or other methods. So we are working on that, and we do appreciate the audit and things that are moving. We're moving things forward, I think, quicker than some of the timelines we initially gave out. So one other thing I want to share with you, we get a number of small grants, and for all of those, we're grateful. This is the 6th year we've received this particular grant, and it is, let me do this real quick. It's back here. This is the Association of County Commissioners of Georgia Civic Affairs Foundation, and this is a Georgia County internship program. Grant's $2,100. They have changed the requirements for this, and they want us to enter it into the public record. So I'm so doing tonight. And just while I'm talking about it, this will fund the majority of the cost for a photo video intern, about 200 hours worth. We have one working with us. This will continue their work for another year, and we are grateful for ACCG for being selected yet again for this. And that is the end of my report.
Thank you, Manager Williams. Madam Auditor? All right, moving on. Mr. Attorney, anything tonight?
No, sir.
All right, and we'll go ahead and go in numeric order with commissioners, beginning with Commissioner Davenport.
Just reminding voters to get out there and vote. We have an election next Tuesday, and the voting has started. Also, if concerned citizens and active citizens of Athens-Clarke County, if you're interested, there are 10 positions open to our board and authorities that are due June 5th, this Friday. Please visit accgov.com/clerk of commission to apply. I encourage all citizens to apply. And that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Davenport. Commissioner Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank the public for gathering peacefully on Sunday afternoon. I think what we were able to bring together was really beautiful. The solidarity that folks of all colors showed for George Floyd and for the countless victims of systemic racism and police violence across this country and in this community. I want to say that I stand with the nonviolent protesters that were tear gassed at the close of the evening, and it let them know that irrespective of what the local government chooses to do, I am here for you in supporting whatever it takes for you all to heal from the harm that this local government did to you on Sunday night. You can find my contact information on the website and reach out to me personally if you need anything. And I'm going to ask my fellow commissioners, to not stay silent about the racism that we still face in this country and we face in this community, because that complicity is part of the violence that destroys Black lives. So if you believe Black Lives Matter, we need you to speak up and say something tonight. As a part of helping dismantle some of the oppressive systems that took the life of George Floyd and have ruined the lives of countless Americans and countless Athenians, I am calling for us to begin work on a transition plan to convert 50% of current armed officer positions to positions of social work, of mental health professionals, of restorative justice counselors over the next 10 years. I think that's an achievable timeline, and one that, and a goal that I've heard a number of us here speak in favor of at our previous priority retreats, in other conversations, and I look forward to beginning that work with you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Link.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to the folks who did come out and peacefully protest on Sunday. I was unable to be there. I'm sheltering in place, watching out for my own health. I know that many on the commission are in high-risk categories as well, and it would not have been a good idea to be in a large crowd. I do have some concerns about how the evening ended, and I'm still awaiting some more transparency on that issue. I'm deeply concerned about the role of the National Guard in policing our community. I really want to see our police video on what happened. There was some video posted on social media directly from the protesters' point of view. And a lot of that has been taken down for whatever reason. I want to put a call out to the public. If you do have any video, please make it publicly available. You can email it to me. You can post it to me on my Facebook page. I think it's really, really urgent that we get all perspectives and find out exactly what went down. And I'm still awaiting some answers. You know, I heard, you know, I was following this in real time, you know, remotely through live feeds and stuff, and some of what I saw was different from what's been reported in eyewitness accounts, and from what I've received texts about. So I really feel like it's urgent that we get the video and understand what happened, and what role some of these foreign entities, these outside agitators, played in our community. They do exist, and I've been reading up on these movements for a long time, long before these recent riots, and it's always been in the back of my mind that these folks were out there waiting for an opportunity, and they found their opportunity to sow division and violence and chaos and unrest. There's so much angst out there, because of this pandemic, because of the political culture and the instigation of a bigoted tyrant in the White House. And we really need to come together and support one another and understand that we cannot have peace if we're burning each other down, burning our communities down. And I'm proud that Athens didn't do that. I'm proud that violence did not erupt. My heart goes out to all the cities that are cleaning up and building back together while, that people are still out of work and dying. We really just need to be as transparent as possible, and folks need to step back and take a breath and understand that we must work together to get over our problems. And I believe this local government is working very, very hard to achieve racial equity. It's going to take a long time because there's 400 years worth of damage done. But I feel like every day we each do some work to move a little bit forward. Last night we had a great discussion in the Government Operations Committee about minority business initiatives and getting to a place where we can get some equity for minority-owned businesses. I feel like, if we wake up every day to do a little bit more work, we can make those steps and get there. And it's not just a matter of prejudice and bigotry, it's a matter of economics. And, a lot of that does come from the top, and in an economic system that is set up against a large majority of the people. And we need to take a look at state level and federal level as well, and do the work to change a system that has really kept a significant number of Americans subjugated forever. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Link. Commissioner Wright?
Yeah, I think I've got mute on. I'm with Melissa as far as being in one of those categories that really has to stay sheltered in place and keep out of that bad germs way. And I have appreciated the reports and the information that I've heard about the peaceful and passionate messages that were shared by many. And I just don't even want to waste airtime on the outside agitators and how that caused things to end from what was a very positive experience for most people at the beginning. My son was part of and his associates were part of the tear gas, and it's just, we've got questions to be answered, and we've all shared our concerns, and we'll get answers to some of that strategy. But the bottom line is we've got mothers being called about their sons and their daughters' lives being taken in ways that shouldn't be happening, from George Floyd all the way back to Rodney King. And so we need to just keep at it and do the things we can do to improve the community and improve the things that it needs to be done. So I'm glad we've got a positive team here for working together.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Denson.
Thank you, Mayor. I first want to definitely say that I appreciate the direction to deal with the Confederate Memorial. That was something I was planning to speak to. That right now the Georgia Code says, with the new bill that was passed in 2019, that local governments are allowed appropriate measures for the preservation, protection, and interpretation of such monuments or memorials. And I think due to the current political and cultural climate and unrest, the preservation and protection of the Confederate Memorial currently sitting there at Green Broad College is in jeopardy and cannot be insured. And so I think that we should have it removed immediately and placed in storage until a appropriate place or time is found. Definitely just to why we're even talking about this, or at this moment at least, for the rally that was on Sunday. It was an amazing time, and I commend Commissioner Parker for her leadership in having that happen. And it was Athens. We should be proud of the Athens people for that day. And they over and over again proved to us that when these rallies and protests happen, that they're able very well to police themselves. I have, at this point, probably helped be a part of hundreds of rallies or protests. And knowing other people who have been involved even more, going years back, it's been decades, from what I understand. Decades, not 50 years, since tear gas was used here in Athens, Georgia, in a situation like this. Somehow we've been able to have hundreds, if not thousands, of marches and rallies. And ones that I've been at where people showed up with weapons to try to instigate. I've been there at the Arch before. Never have we had to have tear gas. I've been a part of sit-ins at that area. Never have we had to have tear gas. There is never an excuse or time for us to tear gas our own people sitting peacefully protesting. It's never appropriate. I ended up going downtown because I heard this was probably going to happen, to try to warn friends of mine who are there, who are not boogaboos or anything else. They were there protesting because they didn't know what else to do anymore, because our society doesn't act like Black Lives Matter. And so I went down there to try to help my friends, to try to warn them, to try to get them out. I don't even know what I was trying to do. But I arrived just in time to basically get tear gas in my face, ending with heart palpitations and terrible pain. I don't know if any of y'all have been tear gas before. It was the first time I had over my face. Seeing people who live here in our community throwing up in parking lots, crying. And this was done at the hands of, from what I understand now, our own police. And also from what I understand, no weapons were found that supposedly led to this action. And I think we need to be, until weapons are found or we have some proof of it, we should not be talking like there was weapons there. There wasn't. And again, until proof is shown that there was. And the same thing with trying to somehow attach this to the attempted lootings that happened on Atlanta Highway, which if you look at the arrest records, those people were young youths that definitely got into some trouble that lived here in Athens, Georgia. They were not at all associated with, again, boogaboos from outside of town. And until we have evidence connecting those people to boogaboos, trying to say these were connected incidents, we should not be talking like they were. Up until that point, that's misinformation. It's unfair. We need to make sure that the people in this county, our city, are getting accurate, solid information when we have a dire situation like this happen, when we have our own residents get gassed. So I am proud of the people of Athens-Clarke County for remaining peaceful through that entire time. So I think it's important for us to remember that the only violence that occurred during that night was violence that was instigated by the police and National Guard. The only weapons that were used that night were weapons that were used by the police and the National Guard. Never did any of those protesters do those things. So I think we can do better. I think we must do better. I think the people of Athens deserve better. I think a great way for us to start is in that budget process. Some of the things that Commissioner Parker spoke about. I want us to invest ourselves in trying to make that transition happen. Commissioner Parker and I will be proposing tomorrow night that we go ahead and put aside $50,000 so that we can actually develop a plan and strategy to make that happen over the next 10 years. And I also definitely think that we should do everything we can right now to drop all charges on the peaceful arrested protesters. Because, again, having more people in our jail right now during a pandemic is something we're trying to avoid. And as we saw again, also, no weapons were found on these individuals. So I think we should just drop all charges on them. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner D. Smith.
I too am very proud of the protesters that showed up Sunday night. I was proud of them then. I'm proud of them now. I agree with a lot that Commissioner Denson just said. I think the charges should be dropped. I think we're lacking transparency. There's too many unconfirmed rumors. There are too many unconfirmed facts. And the fact that it took all day to get, and it wasn't even a press release, it was a memo that we were sent, which I immediately published, by the way, is inexcusable. We should have had the facts laid out to the public by no later than noon or 1 o'clock yesterday, and I don't understand why that didn't happen. I'm committed to doing all we can toward racial justice, racial equity, as you all are. I think it's a great idea to allocate $50,000 to do this study. It's an interesting idea. I'd like to see what how that could be done. I'm sure you all join me in at least let's see if we can add another crisis intervention team to the police department this year. That we can at least have 3 shifts covered by a team each. And I'm very frustrated. I'm very frustrated about the lack of information, the lack of it being forthcoming. And Mr. Mayor, we really need to get the facts out. And they're not out yet. There's some opinions, and there's also a lot of rumors about things like rubber bullets. Were there or were there not rubber bullets fired? There's so many questions, and the public and we deserve answers. So let's get them.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Edwards.
I had a meaningful moment participating in the march on Sunday. I'd never seen so many people marching in Athens, Georgia. 2,000 people is what I guessed at the moment. And I think all things considered, it was a respectable assembly of individuals. There were some harrowing moments, I'm not going to lie. At one point, an individual shouted out that he had a gun and then started running, and it started a mini stampede. So that was unsettling, but it was pretty swiftly handled by the Athens police. That individual was detained, and the protest marshals were able to instill calm, and the assembly continued. Probably the most unsettling moment for me, though, was when 6 to 7 individuals wearing Hawaiian shirts and heavily armed with semi-automatic long guns. Each of them had at least 2. Showed up at the assembly. And from the research I've done, from what I've read, these individuals had the appearance of members of the Boogaloo movement. Just sounds silly to say it, but this is a anti-government conspiracy hatched on the internet site 4chan that experts now classify them as accelerationists. They attach themselves to any protest happening, doesn't matter where, and cloak their intentions by claiming they're providing security from the police. So these are basically armed insurrectionist forces that attended this protest, and immediately their mere presence ignited an extreme amount of conflict and unsettling behavior, which concerned me. In a crowd of 2,000 people, it's easy to see how the presence of insurrectionist forces heavily armed with semi-automatic weapons can quickly spiral out of control. So I salute the organizers who ended the rally at that moment, precisely, when the Boogaloos showed up. And I'd say about 1,800 people went home. Maybe 200 people stayed. And from all indications that I've seen of hard evidence, they began a sit-in protest and carried on through the night past the curfew. I support the mayor that monument has got to come down immediately. And I appreciate the legal team looking at it, but quite honestly, that monument poses an extreme threat to the stability of this community. There's a rally scheduled for Saturday, and I'm afraid somebody's going to throw a chain around that 40-foot tall obelisk erected by one of the greatest Confederate propagandists ever, Laura and her daughter, Mildred Rutherford. Mildred Rutherford, who claimed Abraham Lincoln owned slaves and didn't write the Gettysburg Address. This is who we protect by holding that monument up. I argue and I strongly urge my colleagues to please support me. I want a crane out there tomorrow or the next day, just like they did in Birmingham yesterday, for the protection and safety of that monument, for the protection and safety of this community. I want to see that monument taken down. It has already been defaced and damaged. It must be warehoused and protected and restored. There is clear guidance in state law, for me, clear enough for me, that we need to act swiftly, because the sanctity of that monument does not outweigh the sanctity of lives that are threatened if folks try to pull that monument down. It weighs tons, and it would easily crush whoever is in that area. So I eagerly await the results of Attorney Drake's inquiry, and I strongly urge us to move it immediately. Insurrectionist forces have penetrated this town and usurped the goodwill of organizers and peaceful protesters. There's a rally scheduled for Saturday that very well may see the same amount of people, thousands. This is one small step we can take to remove the iconography of the Old South that has allowed these wounds and racist subordination of Black lives to exist for so long in this country, and I've had enough. And the people who were there on Sunday night had every right to be there. And absent any evidence showing that they carried weapons, they had a right to stay there without tear gas. And I would like to say, I look forward to our conversation tomorrow, where I'm sure we'll hear from management about tactical protocols from the police. And maybe we have the discussion that, you know, maybe we allow folks to sit in for a while. Maybe we allow them to protest for a while, absent evidence to the contrary that they're holding weapons. Now, I haven't issued any sort of written statement or public proclamation beyond this right now, because I know there's information coming in all the time about this operation and what happened. But I will say, without equivocation, that, and I think all my colleagues agree, that this government does not stand for the tear gassing of sit-in protesters who peacefully assemble. I feel fairly confident, 100% confident, that I speak for everyone on this call. For individuals peaceably assembling and sit-in protesting, they deserve to be free of tear gas and rubber bullets or anything else. I salute those folks, because if you look around the country and the devastation suffered by so many of our peer communities, like Asheville, North Carolina, right up the road, about the size of Athens, last night, extreme amount of looting and property damage and public hazards. New York City, looting happening every night. Extreme discord in Atlanta. It's different here, though, isn't it? Isn't it different? I felt different on Sunday. 2,000 people and just a couple of hiccups. So I look forward to hearing more tomorrow night. I'm terribly disturbed by George Floyd's murder at the hands of Minneapolis police. And shortly thereafter, I sent a memo to management gaining assurances that chokehold tactics are absolutely prohibited by our police. Not just prohibited, but that our police and our chief have actively cultivated a culture that prohibits chokehold tactics, so that in the rare and unfortunate event that one might happen here, our district attorney and our judges can point to that culture and immediately press charges. There will be no waiting in this county. And I thank my colleagues for the solidarity, and look forward to meeting tomorrow night. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Herod.
Thank you. I agree with a lot of what my colleagues have said. In terms of the monument, I would like to see it moved. It is where it's presently located is, my understanding, is the third location that it's been in Athens over its history. So if it's a monument that has been moved in the past, I would hope that we would be able to move it in the present day. I agree with what Commissioner Edwards just said, that it seems to me that it's in the present context, it is a danger to public health. It is a focal point. It is going to get pushed over, I'm sure, by somebody, and I'm concerned that that will lead to great physical harm, if not death, if somebody is caught under that. I also have some significant concerns about issues of transparency. I still think that there are a lot of questions about what happened on Sunday night that we don't really have answers to yet. And so I'm looking forward to our conversation tomorrow. One of the fundamental tenets of what this country is about is the right of the people to gather peaceably, and we have to ensure that that happens here in Athens-Clarke County. That is a fundamental right of the people. It's part of our social contract between government and people, that the people have a right to peaceably assemble and to seek redress for their concerns. So I would like to, I've already sent several questions to the manager's office yesterday, and some of my colleagues have also sent questions. I would really think we need a rapid answers to those questions. I agree with Commissioner Neesmith. I was disappointed that it took so long for us as elected officials to find out some answers to some basic questions yesterday, nearly 24 hours after the events of Sunday night took place. So I'm hoping that we could do better than that. I think I, like everybody on the commission, was appalled at what happened in Minneapolis. We all know that that's not a unique event. One of the things, though, that made it different is that it was on camera. There have been other events, obviously similar events that have been on camera, but to watch a man murdered by a police officer with his knee on that man's neck for nearly 9 minutes, and to see 3 other police officers stand around and do nothing, there's nothing you can call it other than murder. And I would hope that in terms of our own police officers here, and I'm a great supporter of our Athens-Clarke Police Department. I think they do a tough job. But I really don't want to see that kind of thing happen here. And whatever we need to do in terms of training or anything like that, that can never happen here in Athens. And in terms of the events in Minnesota, I'm very happy that finally the prosecutors up there decided that they were going to charge the police officers. To me, it's clearly murder. And they should go to prison for a very long time.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Thornton.
Actually, I am very proud. Also, I watched the rally from home. I was waiting to. I haven't been out directly lately because I hadn't been feeling well, and I probably would have been down there and participated. I'm very emotional about this because I don't have all the answers, and everybody's saying their side of the story. Let's be honest, we're not going to get the right answer. We're not going to get it. Everybody has their version, and they're sticking to it, and that's fine. The question is, where do we go from here? And I'm really kind of tired of some folk talking about Black Lives Matter. And when we are still discriminated, left out of issues in our own government for positions, advancement, and growth and opportunity. I'm really kind of sick of it when people come into Athens and don't even reach out to the Black community. I'm really kind of sick of folk acting like you have all the answers and won't go back and check your history and talk to Black folk that have been here and done some things. I'm really kind of sick of it all. And then you want to get out and protest and Black Lives Matter, Black Lives. You don't even know no Black folk like that. And you won't even take the time to find out. But with all of that said, as emotional as I am, I hope that we will take this as an opportunity to move forward and be about the business of people and if we really mean it. But we're not going to get the truth at this point. I am disappointed also that press release took so long. I'm also disappointed that on Friday, when we met with some of the residents in about just some things, and it was actually posted. I get calls wanting to know, Miss Ovita, why didn't you tell us that there was going to be a rally led by another committee. I didn't know it was going to be were 2 rallies. I only knew about one. I've been doing this work too long, and I do take it really personal. When the civil rights movement was at its top point, those protesters had workshops and trainings. They were prepared when they went out there. They weren't just a bunch of people chanting, and they were prepared. They had workshops. They didn't just go out and march. They had a workshop. And then they rolled out their plan. We want to act like this is the civil rights movement, but we don't want to put the work into it that they did back in the day. And we don't even want to give them credit for it. Now, I'm going to say this. Anybody can get mad at me, whatever. At this point, it don't matter. If we are talking about people trying to infiltrate the government and tear the government down, we got to decide if we are serious about fixing this government together. Are we all on the same page about fixing it, or are there other agendas out here? We should be working together. And I don't see that happening at this point. I know we have different philosophies and different ideologies, but, and even I got, people I feel more comfortable talking to. But at the end of the day, are we doing what's best for the folk? And who is going to be the one that can bring us together and not have these fluff little workshops, these good, I'm not doing that no more either. Now, what I was going to say, because I did not know we were going to get into this deep conversation about the rally, what I was going to say, I am real pleased about knowing that we have a number with the local government if people have questions about the COVID. I didn't realize that earlier, but I understand that our number, if people have questions, general questions, people can call 706-613-3333. Also, COVID testing is being provided at the neighborhood health center, and you can call for an appointment at 706-546-5524. And on Friday coming up, they will have a drive-through testing for COVID. And lastly, every Tuesday, I think from 11 until 1, COVID testing is being done at the Sparrow's Nest. I wanted to be positive tonight and talk about things that really we all should be concerned about. But this whole conversation and all these different opinions about what happened, we're never going to get the truth. We'll never get to go, and it's wrong for any of us to say what happened. Whoever is on this call right now and says this is what happened, you weren't in every place all the time. You were at one particular place and saw one particular thing, or a couple of things, and somebody else from a different perspective could have seen something else. I think that the police or whoever could have handled that situation much better than they did. Much better. I would have rather for this government to stand up and say, we're sorry, show some compassion for the people and the protesters that were out there. We're sorry that this happened, and try to make sure it doesn't happen again. But to try to, to muscle up on this is wrong. Show some compassion. But some folk are using these things, these bad things, for your own personal agenda. Now I've said it, and whoever don't like it, you can Facebook me or whatever. But help Black people up. not be trying to drag us along like y'all are saving us. If we don't start looking at our own local government, do we have racism in our own local government, in our departments, in our workshops? And do we? Start at home, clean your own house up first, and then deal with all the racism out there. Do we have racism on this board with this commission? Start cleaning up our own house first. The blind can't lead the blind unless you have another agenda. I remember this was the rise of the Tea Party a few years ago. The Tea Party had an agenda, and it was not for me or some other folk that look like me. But they had an agenda, and they worked it. Now, with all of that, I'm going to say, I'm going to shut down. I hope we can come to something good. I really do. My only comment originally was just to talk about the COVID and the positive things we're doing. That was my intention. But people making a stand and making statements and no, I ain't gonna sit here and listen to that and not say nothing. Let's figure out where the racism is in local government. Let's clean that out. Let's start with ourselves.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Hamby.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it. And I am anxious to receive some full information about what transpired to have a better understanding of how we can avoid anything like this happening in the future. So I look forward to whatever discussion we're having tomorrow. But y'all, I've also seen over and several of us on the commission have seen this, the way we can affect change within this body, within this commission, within this community is certainly through policies that we pass, but also through a budget process that we're about to undertake. And I do appreciate Mayor Gertz and Commissioner Edwards bringing up the monument that has been a source of angst for way too long, and a source of just when we walk by there and not appreciate what that means for a lot of people. That needs to be something that we need to correct. So I appreciate the initiatives and the efforts of you, Mayor, to be able to fix that. When we talk about the budget tomorrow, I hope and I know we will, if we want to impact change and affect change and help this community with equity and with equality, I think the budget's going to be a way to do it. I've seen where that can happen, and hopefully we can do it in a meaningful way. I know Mayor Gertz has a lot of stuff in his budget that does address some equity issues, and I think everybody would agree, and Mayor, I think you would agree too. There's probably some other ideas that we can improve upon and add to that from that standpoint. And I saw this. I think it was on Facebook. Everybody sees things on Facebook these days, and this was a meme that has kind of stuck with me for a while now. I saw it during COVID, but I also see how it relates for the many of the past few months and past week. And it said something like we're all in the same storm, but we are not all in the same boat. And certainly as we're going through these storms of the pandemic and racism, we need to figure out what are the barriers keeping us from building a better community. What are the barriers? What kind of boat are each of us in? Some of us aren't even in a boat. Some of us are in a leaky boat that doesn't help us get through the storm. So hopefully we can start having the conversations that we need to have in Athens and in this community and amongst this commission. And I think tomorrow at our budget will be a start for us to do that. So I look forward to it, and I appreciate listening to everybody's comments. I went last, so I got an opportunity to hear everybody's thoughts, and that was helpful. So I look forward to hearing more tomorrow. So thanks, Mayor.
And if you want me to make a motion, then I will.
If you could make a motion to enter executive session and adjourn upon conclusion of that session.
So moved.
Mr. Mayor, to confirm, that's to discuss personnel.
To discuss personnel, correct.
Can we have a 5-minute break?
I've got a motion from Commissioner Hamby. I've got a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. It is 8:50 at 8:55. I'll see you back here. Thank you.